G'day homebrewers, thanks for tuning in. I'm Jeff and this is 15 Minutes in the Brewery. You can probably see there's kind of a mess in the brewery at the moment. I've got to clean things up, put things away. I've just been too busy, just simply been too busy. Working, traveling for work, etc. Kids sport. Cricket season started again, so my son plays cricket, so we've got 2 days a week training, 2 nights a week training. Cricket Saturday mornings, pretty much from 7 till about 12. That's cut into my time a fair bit. But yeah, the brewery needs a clean. Some of the updates though are quite interesting. I've got this one a while back. This is the Nano Brewery 30 litre kettle. 30 litre kettle, sorry, 30 litre fermenter. Where are you? There you go. So that's the Nano-X 30 litre kettle. Oh, I'll bring that here. So I got that pre-order when they announced they were making these, and they did a pre-order and they did a discount on the pre-orders. So I got this when it was on discount with pre-order. And it's been a really good fermenter. I like it, I really like it. I only got the standard lid on it. So it's just a standard bucket fermenter with a blow off. But what I did to it was, this is probably the main reason why I got it, is I got the yeast collection tank underneath, which is a brew built one that Kegland sells, I believe, and just enables me to harvest and reuse yeasts. Now I do like to do that. I know it's not everyone's cup of tea to harvest and reuse their yeast. I know a lot of people, a lot of brewers just will brew with dry yeast packets every time. So they just have a stock of dry yeast in their fridge and they'll just pitch a new one every time, and that's fine. I used to do that too, that's fine. But I don't know, I just got interested in using liquid yeasts, and partly because there's just different varieties you can use. You don't have to use USO5 or SO4 or Nottingham or K97, you know, or Lallemand versions of those things. You can use 8 different lager yeasts if you can get your hands on them. And a whole plethora of other unique and unusual yeasts that you can get your hand on. So that's one of the reasons, and also just for reusing as well. And I know you can reuse dry yeast. Once you've put dry yeast in and you put it through a batch, you can reuse that. So for me, reusing mostly is for my lagers. I like to get 4 or 5 generations out of lager yeast, because lager yeast is interesting. It's the first generation I always find a little bit dirty, the fermentation. It's not perfectly clean, the first generation. And it's probably because, I mean, I pitch enough, don't get me wrong, I pitch 2 to 3 packets and ferment it about anywhere between 10 and 13 C usually. Just do it the traditional way. Well, 13 is considered warm by European or German standards, but anyway, that's another story. But what I find is the lager yeast tends to ferment cleaner after first generation. That's usually probably just because it's got more cells, so it's reproduced and there's now a larger pitch for the next beer. So I do find it ferments a bit better. I probably should oxygenate my wort, and I know this is another debate. A lot of brewers, or home brewers that is, will say, oh, oxygenation's a waste of time, you shake your ferment around, blah blah blah. But then you go online and you listen to pro brewers and you listen to some really serious amateur brewers talk about oxygenation, and they all swear by it. They all swear by it. And when it comes to lager yeast, I think probably the most important time you could oxygenate is probably when you're going to do a cold lager ferment. So I don't have that, so I think it doesn't matter how much yeast I pack in the first ferment, it tends to be a tiny bit dirty. It just has a little bit extra of fermentation character from yeast, first generation. Then second generation, I find it cleans up. Obviously, like I said, because probably it's just got more cells in there. But I think it hits its stride. I found lager yeast kind of hits its stride around the 3rd to 5th generation. It produces, like I was using 3470, and 3rd or 4th generation, I was getting really clean, beautiful lagers, like clean. Because I never thought W3470 was that clean, to be honest. I mean, what is clean, right? When homebrewers talk about this yeast is clean, does it mean that you can't even taste yeast at all? Because USO5, I can taste USO5. When I brew a pale ale with USO5, I can taste the yeast character. It has a very distinct character, like peaches, like stone fruit. I picked that up. So I'm like, well, is that clean because it's got a flavor in there, or is it clean because is a yeast clean because it has no residual flavor that leaves in the beer, or is it clean because it does leave a residual flavor but it doesn't leave any off flavors? I don't know. I don't understand what some people talk about when they say clean sometimes. So with W3470, sometimes I get little hints of banana. You get a bit of sulfur, but sulfur's good. A little bit of sulfur in a lager, a tiny bit's actually quite good. It adds to that kind of perception of Christmas, I guess. Anyway, so had that for a while. I'm waffling. I've got sidetracked already. I got this the other day. That's the pressure lid for it, and all the bits and pieces. I've just washed them. So I soaked these in a really hot PBW solution, all the bits and pieces, and I got the cooling coil. I don't have the glycol chiller yet, but I got the cooling coil and all the pieces to go in here. So the only thing I need to do now is get a glycol chiller. And I'm probably looking at the Keg King ones. They look pretty good value. And I know someone at the moment who's using one for the first time, and I'm kind of following them to see their experience, see what it's like, I guess. So that's the fermenter bit. That's what's changed there. Just trying to think what else has been happening. I've brewed a few beers in the last month. I've brewed a pale ale. I brewed a Pacific Ale clone, which came out really nice, 4.4%. It's like a Stone and Wood Pacific Ale. Galaxy throughout the boil and in dry hop. Really nice beer, tastes really good. I brewed a golden ale. So not a similar recipe. I guess it's quite different because it was just base malt with about 6 or 7% amber or Cara amber. I can't remember which one now. One of those two. So it's just those two malts, plus it was Galaxy and Motetti. Is that how you pronounce it? Motetti? Don't get angry at me, New Zealand, please. I think it's Motetti. Anyway, so those two together, really nice combo. I brewed a Helles Lager. That was the last beer that went through. This was a Helles Lager, and I used Bluestone Pilsner yeast from Melbourne. First time I've used any of their yeast. I used their Pilsner yeast. So that was interesting. The fermentation was interesting. I did a starter, so I grew it up in a 2-litre starter and pitched it in a Helles, which turned out to be 5.25%. The beer dropped clear really quickly. Interesting. It was 21 days in the fermenter. About 6 of those days were at cold temperatures, like as in cold crash, like as in 3 or 4 degrees, something like that. But under 4. It dropped clear like really quickly. And interestingly, I can pick up banana in it. Now I'm not 100% sure. Now I did all the checks before I started the cold crash to make sure there was no issues. There was no diacetyl, there was nothing like that I could detect. But it was a bit fruity. It has that bit of a fruity note. It's almost like a hint of apples with banana and a bit of sulfur. It's interesting. And with the beer now cold and carbonated, you don't pick up the banana. The banana really came through in the samples when it was warm. Now it's on its way to being fully carbonated. It's just sitting on 10 psi at the moment in my serving fridge. I did do a burst carbonation on it for a few hours, just to get it up, get it going. It's a really nice beer. I'll actually pour one and I'll show you what it looks like. Alrighty, just in time for the fridge to turn on. Nice. So there it is. There's my Helles. It's beautifully light. It's a very light colour beer. I'm pretty sure you can see that. The SRM would be around 3, I reckon. I reckon it's around 3, probably maybe a bit over 3, between 3 and 3.5, more than likely. It's still carbonating, so it's not quite there yet. It hasn't got a head on it, so. It's a delicious beer. But like I said, there's a bit of fruitiness that comes through with a hint of sulfur. And it's almost like a little bit of banana, which is interesting and odd. Now, I don't know where it's come from. I don't know if it's something to do with this particular yeast strain by this company. I don't know if it's the pitch. It fermented at 13 degrees Celsius, so that is warm by lager standards, believe it or not. I think the Germans call 13C a warm fermentation. A hot 18C would be a hot fermentation. A standard cool fermentation for them would probably be 10 or 11 max. And often they pitch at 7 or 8 degrees Celsius, so 13 is actually considered warm, I think, from memory. So whether it was fermenting at 13C, there was no pressure. It was done in this, no pressure, 13C. 21 days it spent in the fermenter. It spent, how many of those days? Probably about 14, 15 of those days at 13C. Didn't change. I never raised the temperature at the end. I didn't have to. Did samples, tested it, and there was no issues with anything. Just a bit of fruitiness from the hops, but no reason to raise the temperature. So I don't think it's a flaw. I don't think that flavor is an off flavor from a mistake or something like that. There was plenty of yeast in the pitch. It was a fairly big pitch. Like I said, I did a 2 litre starter for it. It was fresh yeast, fresh from Bluestone. The yeast cake it produced was huge. In the end, it literally, I'll show you the container, these containers. So these brew built containers that Kegland sells, the yeast literally came right up to about there, like a bit over 3/4 of the way up. This was loaded with yeast in the end. So there was plenty of yeast in there. So I don't know whether it is the yeast or not. I don't actually mind it. It is fruity. It's fruity. It's a fruity lager. And it's a bit sweet on the end. The final, like on your palate. All right, that's enough of that. The last thing I'll talk about is, so I've got 2 more fermentations going now. I've got 2 Fermenting Juniors, both fermenting in my fridge. I could just fit 2 of them in there side by side. I've done 2 because I had 2 lager recipes I wanted to brew, and they're both same fermentation schedules, so it made sense to do them on the same day, which was a long day, but I did them on the same day. So I've got 18 litres of Schwarzbier and about 17.5 litres of a Munich Dunkel. So both dark lagers. Dunkel's a sweeter dark lager, and the Schwarzbier is a drier dark lager, more going towards stout territory, but still lager. Not heavy, nice light, with a little bit of roast. Whereas a Dunkel, no roast, shouldn't have any roast in a Dunkel, and a bit more sweeter on the palate, with a little bit more complex malt bill. So the Schwarzbier was basically just Pilsner malt, black patent. Okay, so the Schwarzbier was 64% Bohemian Pilsner malt by Wyman, 29.8% or 30% Gladfield Munich malt, and just over 6% of black patent from Crisp. I hopped that to 31 IBUs with just Magnum at the beginning of the boil. SRM should be about 30, and I'm probably looking at about a 5% beer. Just a little bit either side of a 5% beer. The other one, the Munich Dunkel, this malt bill was, so the main malt for the Dunkel was Munich. So instead of Pilsner being the main malt, now we swapped it back to Munich. So 75% of the malt bill was Munich, 15.5% Bohemian Pilsner, 5.5% Cara Munich 2 by Wyman as well, and 4% of Gladfield roasted wheat. So a huskless roasted wheat. Hopefully I'm not getting any roast from that amount of roasted wheat. It's only 4%. But that brings my colour up to 18 SRM, which is in the range of a Dunkel. I think it's the lighter end of the range, but I prefer the lighter end. Mind you, what's fermenting in there is a lot darker by the look of it. So it's kind of coming around 5% as well. And that is only 23 IBUs. So lower IBUs than the Schwarzbier, but just with a slightly sweeter malt bill, and featuring Munich malt, because it's a Munich Dunkel, so it should feature the Munich malt. I see a lot of Munich Dunkel recipes online where people put like 60 or 70% Pilsner malt in, and then they just darken it up with other malts. It's like, it's just a stout, right? Because a Munich Dunkel should be brewed, this is my opinion, I guess, but it should be majority Munich malt, because Munich is a base malt. So we'll see how those two beers go. I had a problem with one of them, the Schwarzbier, and the problem was in fermentation, and it was with the actual the spunding valve. I set both spunding valves using a bottle. So I gassed the bottle and I got the bottle to 4 psi. I set my blow tie, no problem. I set the other, because I have one blow tie and I have this other old type of screw in. I'll put it up on the video so you can see. Really annoying type of spunding valve. I should just chuck it out, honestly, and I should buy another blow tie. They're only like 16 bucks. So I'm being a bit of a tight ass, but the other spunding valve jammed. It jammed up and wasn't releasing, and I didn't know this because I put them in the fermenter, pitched the yeast. The next day I had to go away for 2 days for work, so I was away for 2 days. I came back and I found the Schwarzbier at God knows how much psi. The dial had gone all the way around and it hit the other side. So it was probably 25 to 30 psi at 11C, and the yeast wasn't happy. That's the problem. The yeast wasn't. As soon as I opened the fridge, I could smell it. The yeast was not happy. I could smell sulfur, hydrogen sulfide. You could smell it. I was like, oh no, what's gone wrong? And then I checked the Dunkel first. No, that's fine. That looks good. Fermentation good. I looked at the Schwarzbier. I was like, something wrong. And I looked at the gauge and I thought it was on 0 psi, but the needle had gone all the way around back to the start. I'm like, shit, that's actually the other way. Oh no. So it took 5 hours to get all the pressure out. 5 hours to release that pressure. I kid you not, because it was an 18 litres of beer in a 20 litre fermenter. So it has small headspace, which is can be a problem, I guess. But no more worse than fermenting in a keg, I guess. So, but as soon as I tried to release any pressure, I dropped 5 psi and it would foam right up, and I have to wait for the foam to settle and it would go back up. So I drop it again, foam will go up, wait for the foam to settle, and the psi would go back up. Oh, I did that over and over again, but eventually we got it down to, I got it down to 0. I got the lid off and it's still active. So the yeast is in active phase. Don't have to worry about oxygen. Pretty sure we don't have to worry about oxygen. Got the lid off, opened it, swirled it around, gave it a good swirl, tipped it, so that CO2 and hydrogen sulfide can get out a bit, get a bit of air into it. So got as much air back into the fermenter as I could, and then did that a few times and capped it back up. Got the spunding valve set properly, and now it was fermenting at like 3 psi, which is where I want it to be. I'd only want to spund it at the end just to bring the carbonation up at the end, but in the beginning I just ferment them at 2, but under 5 psi. So anywhere under 5 psi I usually ferment lagers at under pressure. So so it doesn't smell like hydrogen sulfide anymore. I had another smell of it before, and the yeast does smell like it's not stressed anymore. So I think I caught it in time. I actually caught it within 24 hours of yeast of the fermentation kicking off. So I think I got it in time. I don't think any damage was done. I hope not. You can definitely tell the yeast was stressed, which is really annoying. Oh, it's annoying because I was away. So I would have come in the morning and checked, and the pressure would have been right up around 10 or 15. I would have gone, oh no, what's gone wrong? And I would have caught it before it got really high. So it was probably 25 or 30 psi. Anyway, lesson learned. Stop being a tight ass and just buy a few blow ties. They're the best. They are the best spunding valves. Blow ties by Kegland are honestly the best spunding valves. They're so easy to set. They're so easy to adjust. They're so reliable. Every other one I've tried, apart from I've never tried the that one that guy makes in California, where his name is Spundit. I've never tried a Spundit 2.0. And I've heard they're reliable and they're really good as well. But of all the other ones that I can get in Australia, they're all crap. The blow ties are pretty much the best. So reliable, like I said, all that sort of stuff. So all good. So hopefully those two beers come out really nice. Looking forward to a Dunkel. I love the Weihenstephaner Dunkel. Oh, love it. Such a good beer. It's a summer beer too. Like it's a spring to summer beer as well, because it's, even though it's a darker beer, it's a lager, and it goes down like a pilsner, but it has that extra flavour, So anyway, there you go. That's the Helles that I brewed. Beautiful beer. Light. That's also a very light IBU. That's only about 19 IBUs. So it's not a challenging beer on the palate like that, which is probably why it reminds me of Resch's DA. because I know that does have very low IBUs and has a bit of a sweet aftertaste and it's fruity. So yeah, nice beer, love it. Anyway, that's what's happening. Hopefully I'll be back again next week with a quick video. This video is obviously dragged on a bit longer than I intended because I was talking about my dramas with my Schwarzbier. But hopefully next week I'll show you some samples of different other beers and we talk about some recipes. And hopefully in the next couple of months I can put out a couple more videos where I just go into depth about recipes that I've been brewing, ones that I created myself. So that's it. If you got this far, then I am very grateful because that was probably pretty boring. I probably put most people to sleep. But if you got this far, thanks for watching. Happy brewing. Hope your brewing goes well. Hope you don't have any dramas like I've had this week. And hope you don't get COVID because it sucks. Otherwise, thanks again for watching.